This is Sports Talk Live on Thursday, March 14th, 2013. I'm Steve Bunin. We have got another busy day in the CSN Houston newsroom, much of it regarding the National Football League and a Kobe cheap shot as well. To discuss it with me today, I am joined by Matt Jackson of Sports Talk 790 and Danny Clark, our CSN Houston NFL analyst, longtime veteran linebacker in the league. Guys, our top five at 5 o'clock. No question what's number one. Ed Reed. He's in town. We know that. He's been meeting with the Texans. We know that. And John McClain of the Houston Chronicle, who knows all when it comes to Texans, has just reported that Reed will be spending the night here in Houston and is expected to sign with the Texans tomorrow. Danny, we'll start with you. What would the addition of Ed Reed mean to Houston?
Well, it's a no-brainer as far as the organization is concerned. I think that, a first ballot Hall of Famer, just coming off a Super Bowl win. He missed the first one in 2000 in Baltimore. So I think that this is a guy that will bring leadership, a winning attitude, and an aggressive attitude to the Texans defense. I mean, there's a need for playmakers on the back end, and he's definitely a guy that can get that done.
Matt, is he still a playmaker at an elite level?
I think for 1 year he can be, and I think this was a short-term move looking at the big picture of the defense, because you can't pay anyone. When the Texans let Glover Quinn go to Detroit, they were looking ahead to next year when you have to pay Brian Cushing. And the year after that, when you've got Kareem Jackson and J.J. Watt that have to get paid, you're going to get Ed Reed on a 1 year or 2 year deal, probably at halfway decent money, and then he's going to walk. And you can draft a safety in this year's draft to go under both him and Daniel Manning, and next year you can kind of look and see if you want to bring Manning back or bring Reed back and worry about it next year. But this was smart, not only to get a guy that's going to bring you some leadership, a little bit of swagger to the table, a guy that's been in the big game, that has a ring, but he's a different type of player. He's a true center fielder. Glover Quinn was more of a jack of all trades. Ed Reed is a true free safety, something the Texans really have never had.
But age does matter at that position as much as any other, guys. If you could have a do-over, knowing what you know now, and we don't know the terms of the contract, we don't know for sure that Reed's going to sign, but let's presume Reed signs a short-term deal here. Danny, we'll start with you. If you could have a do-over, would you rather have Glover Quinn, longer deal, a younger guy, or Ed Reed, bigger resume, a little bit older?
I like Glover Quinn. Again, he's a kid that can play a number of different positions. He is undersized, and he has a problem against defending big tight ends in this league, and that is what's dominating our league right now is the pass-catching tight end. So, again, I like Glover Quinn for his youth and his versatility, but, again, Ed Reed is a future Hall of Famer, and I would love to have that as well.
Matt, if you had to choose between the two, what would you have preferred?
I'm going Ed Reed. I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think 80% of Ed Reed is still better than Glover Quinn. You're going to have Brian Cushing back as well, which means Ed Reed's going to have to help you less in the box and can kind of do his job. He'll change the defense, how they play things at the back end a little bit, but give me the Hall of Famer.
Again, the news broke just as we were coming on set. John McClain of the Houston Chronicle reporting that Ed Reed will stay in Houston tonight and get a deal done with the Texans tomorrow. That would certainly fill a huge hole in the secondary considering the departure of Glover Quinn. Number two on our top five at 5, another departure from another member of the defense of the Houston Texans, Connor Barwin. It looks like it is now official. He has agreed to terms on a 6-year deal with the Philadelphia Eagles, joining James Casey, who also left the Texans for the Eagles within this week. Now, guys, length of deal doesn't really matter that much in the NFL. Just ask Ryan Fitzpatrick. But the guaranteed money does matter, and it does make some statement about how much you're wanted. Danny, what do you think about the Connor Barwin deal with the Eagles?
This is huge. My last 4 years of playing, you look forward to free agency. And if a ball club or organization allow you to get to free agency, you look for that opportunity to go to the highest bidder and the best fit for you as a player and your family. I think this is great for Connor because he's a guy that's entering his 5th year in this league. The 11-sack season he had 2 years ago was just, he just scratched the surface as far as how good he can be. And I think with that Chip Kelly offense led team, I think he's going to get some great opportunities on that defensive side.
Matt?
To me, the biggest question is, can he get letter jackets in green in Philadelphia? Because from a football standpoint, I don't think you're going to miss a guy who was the 29th ranked 3-4 outside linebacker out of 32 in the NFL this year. 3 sacks is worth $40 million potentially. I just don't get it. Good for him. You're worth what one team will pay you. But the Texans, to me, were smart to not pay Connor Barwin.
Danny, you're a linebacker. How do you explain the drop-off in at least the sack total, if not all the other numbers, for Connor Barwin this past season?
I think his name is J.J. Watt. I think that, again, that defensive line was very aggressive. And, you know, again, he needed to tear it up, especially a free agent year. That's when you're supposed to, you know, it lights out as far as the way you play on that field. And, again, he's a guy who had a down year, but someone saw something in a guy that is a former basketball player, former tight end. You look at all the other basketball players in this league, the Tony Gonzalez's and, you know, the Gates at San Diego. These people are dynamic players to transfer their basketball game over to football. Connor, I've seen this guy jump 12.5 feet and dunk a ball before. So one of the most athletic guys I've ever seen, and he has a lot of upside left.
All right, Matt, so our question on Twitter that we're asking our viewers is, what should the Texans' biggest priority be right now? Let me put that question to you. Given what they've lost, given that we assume that they're going to get Ed Reed, what should be Houston's biggest priority at this exact moment, Matt?
If it's not a veteran wide receiver, I'd like to see him get an inside linebacker. I'm going to throw a name out there, Larry Grant, who was a backup for Patrick Willis in San Francisco. I think he's a guy you can get relatively on the cheap. He played very well in Wilson's absence in 2011. He's an outstanding special teams player which would address a weakness on the team, but I think you need an inside linebacker next to Brian Cushing. I think Larry Grant will be within their price range and could help the team in a big way.
What do you think? Danny, they need help at wide receiver, too, right side of the offensive line. What do you want to see as Houston's biggest priority right now? Man,
I want to see a number 2 receiver. That's a big deal. You got Posey, went down with the Achilles at the end of the year. He was coming on very strong last year. And Marshawn, I think there was a kid that Keyshawn Martin, is a kid that has some really good upside. But, again, we need a dynamic guy in free agency. And I just don't want to wait till the draft because you need somebody to compete with that guy in the draft. So I'm really excited about a number 2 receiver.
It's funny you should mention number 2 receivers. Number 3 in our top 5 at 5, Wes Welker goes to the Broncos. Danny Amendola goes to the Patriots. Here are 2 guys that can do some serious damage in this league. You take a look at what they've done the last few seasons. Amendola has had his issues with injuries. Matt, we'll begin with you on this one. When you see Welker go to the Broncos for a 2-year deal, $12 million, Amendola go to the Patriots for $6 and $31, what do you think?
I think the Patriots got a little too smart and a little too cute on this one. Not only did you let Wes Welker go, but he's going to one of your rivals. I think it's very unlikely that the Denver Broncos would have signed Danny Amendola, but they were able to pick up an all-pro in Wes Welker, guy that had over 110 catches last season for the Patriots, and I think you made your quarterback unhappy. You're talking about $2 million in terms of the contract he got from the Broncos and what the Patriots offered. I'm sorry, all due respect to the kid from the Woodlands, Danny Amendola, but he's no Wes Welker.
Well, Danny?
Yeah, Tom Brady should be really teed off. I think he took a pay cut to get Wes Welker signed, and it didn't happen. He didn't take a pay cut to pay Danny Amendola. So, again, I think that was a big problem for the Patriots. And, again, they're going to see that guy deep within the playoffs this year.
A little later in the show, we'll discuss how Welker's move to the Broncos impacts the power structure in the AFC and where Houston now resides. If they were considered a top-tier team, are they any longer? And what's the difference between them, the Patriots, and the Broncos? Right now, number 4 in our top 5 at 5, Kobe Bryant suffers a sprained ankle. He is out indefinitely. Could just be a day or so, could be weeks. After yesterday, this happens towards the end of his game. Dante Jones, who has a history with Kobe Bryant, in my mind, if you just look at the play, he's playing pretty good stand-up defense. He doesn't want to foul, so he's not going to jump up in the air. He didn't turn around and move his rear end into Kobe's knee or give a sort of a chop block sort of effort. To me, this is not a cheap shot, but almost everyone else on Twitter seems to say that I'm wrong. Matt, we'll start with you.
Well, the NBA has come out today and said that this should have been a foul, should have been called a foul. I'd love to get Dante Jones the benefit of the doubt, but he has a history with Kobe Bryant. It's unfortunate. It's something Bruce Bowen used to do to Ray Allen all the time.
Foul, yes, but cheap shot.
I mean, that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get the guy to roll his ankle. That's the whole purpose for making that play, is to have the guy land on your foot. That's the only reason to make that play. So because that's the reason you make that play, I mean, maybe you go so far to call it a cheap shot. I'd love to give him the benefit of the doubt, but he's got a history with Kobe.
Danny?
To the untrained eye, you would not see that as a foul at all. But, again, this is just like in football. Defensive guys hold on to offensive players when they're nestled up close. Again, you don't see it, but it's definitely a dirty play. And, again, I think that this guy has a track record of being dirty against Kobe, and it showed.
Well, with the Lakers star out indefinitely, that could have an effect, obviously, on the team's performance and therefore the Western Conference standings. The Houston Rockets made a bit of a statement last night, coming off a bad loss at Phoenix. They host the Suns, and number 5 in our top 5 at 5, the Rockets blow away the Phoenix Suns by some 30 points. 6 guys in double digits. Dantes Motiejunas will be on our show in just a little bit. We'll go one-on-one with him. A career-high 19 points for Demo. Again, all 5 starters in double digits. What did the Rockets prove after a testy week with head coach Kevin McHale, Matt?
It proved that Hamed Haddadi's performance last Saturday night was a fluke. No, the Phoenix Suns are the worst team in the Western Conference by a landslide. All it proved is that when the Rockets are rolling offensively, they can't be stopped. They've got 6 or 7 guys that can beat you on that end of the floor. But this is still a young team that's going to have its ups and downs. But with this homestand, with 6 consecutive games after the one last night, they need to take advantage of it. I don't think last night's game necessarily proved anything other than Phoenix is who we thought they were, a really bad team.
They are quite bad. Danny, you've played for teams when a coach is down on you guys, or at least in the media, he's starting to kill you guys. Yeah. What impact does that have when you actually come game time?
It depends on that locker room. I mean, if you have a bunch of leaders and the guys that doesn't need a bunch of shouting, you know, it's like Phil Jackson. He's a great guy of understanding his personnel. And again, you can scream at some guys and you can just give a guy a look and it'll get the message. So again, screaming at guys or shouting at your fellas in the media is tough, but I think a good team can take it.
Rockets are back in action tomorrow night at home here on CSN Houston against the Minnesota Timberwolves. Then Sunday night against the Golden State Warriors, the team that is directly in front of them in the Western Conference standings. Top 5 at 5 is over, but this show is just beginning. Up next, all these moves that the Broncos are making and that Houston isn't. If we look at the AFC right now, where do the Texans rank? With the Super Bowl champs, the Broncos making moves, the Colts making moves, Wes Welker to Peyton Manning. Let's see what our panel has to say about that. And you might not like the answer. That's coming up on Sports Talk Live. Steve Bunin back with you on Sports Talk Live. We are joined now by the star of last night's Rockets-Suns game at Toyota Center. A 30-point win for Houston, led by a career high from Dantes Motiejunas. You know him as Demo. Demo, congratulations on the game last night. For you individually, what was clicking?
I think the most important thing was the defense for our team. And I think that was the case why we won that game so easily. Because, you know, as soon as we stop our opponents, it was easy baskets for us, a lot of easy baskets, and, you know, we just take the game to the end.
What were your expectations for yourself this season?
I mean, you know, when you start first 15 games on the bench, it's kind of hard to expect something. So literally I was like thinking, okay, the season is over for me. I just need to work and improve myself and be ready for the next one, you know, compete in the next one. You know, this opportunity was like from the sky for me. I didn't really realize what happened until it really happened. What
was the lowest point for you individually?
What do you mean?
Like the hardest moment for you?
I mean, that's the thing for me. Every day sitting on the bench, every game is really like, it was killing me. Like, I really hate to do that. I mean, I feel like I'm a part of the team from one side, but I'm not part of the team from the other side. And it was really tough time for me. But I mean, you know, I tried to find the positive things, tried to improve myself every day, and tried to help for a team, supporting them from the bench in the practices.
And when did Kevin McHale finally tell you things are going to change for you?
He didn't really tell me. I mean, I really find out on the internet, and just, you know, then a couple of days later, he came to me and he said that, you know, right now you will start to play more and more, so you have to be ready, you have to be more concentrated, and you have to prepare yourself better for the games, you know. So, like, watch extra scouting of your players, that you will not be lost on the court.
And what's been the best moment since you started to earn more playing time?
I mean, the best moment that, you know, it makes nice feeling when we play with these guys, when everyone cheers the ball. For me, it's not only when I score, I have great feeling. When I pass the ball and my pass, I mean, the guy make assist for me, make a basket after my pass, it makes me really good feeling.
How does the basketball here in the NBA compare to your experience in Europe?
It is different, but I mean, it's still basketball. it's a little bit different with the refereeing, and I mean, some things are just really different. Just, you know, how they call some fouls, so that's why, you know, me as an international rookie, I need to adjust more. It was quite a bit of time till I understand how everything's work out. But I mean, I'm happy right now. You know, I'm playing. I'm feeling like CJV agent with this microphone in the air. Yeah.
And you're styling too. What about life? I mean, how does life compare for you in the United States compared to Europe?
I mean, 2 months I was playing Monopoly, you know, and with my friends. I mean, I didn't have no internet, no TVs, nothing. So I mean, it was first 2 months was really something for me. It was exploring more than living, you know. And you know, right now everything goes in the track. I have an apartment, I have everything what I need, you know. Kind of get to know more and more Houston. So I'm really happy. This town is really nice.
Who are you closest with on the team? Of all your teammates, who's your closest friend?
I mean, I'm close with all the guys. We have pretty good chemistry in the team, you know. And but the closest guy who lives next to me is Omer. You know, we're living across the hallway.
Really?
So usually on the weekend, yeah, usually in the weekend in downtown, it's only me or him are driving a car, no one else.
Two big 7-footers
So,
walking around. It'd be pretty easy to pick out.
Yeah.
How did you end up in the same
Yeah,
apartment complex?
I don't know. I mean, it's across the street from Toyota Center, so it's kind of not far away for us to just walk to the practices. I mean, I don't like to waste time driving 20-30 minutes from somewhere else, so just try to live as close as possible and don't waste my time.
What will determine the success of the Rockets? What has to happen for you guys to play at your perfection?
I think, you know, when we play good defense, our flow of the game is just going the way we want to go, and I think that's the key of success. You know, if we continue to play great defense, if we keep getting stops on the main guys on the court, you know, we're gonna have a lot of victories.
All right, Demo, congratulations on the great game against the Suns and the success for the Rockets as a team. Best of luck down the stretch here in Houston.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Another busy day in the CSN Houston newsroom, especially with the National Football League news that keeps on coming. Time now for our SportsCentral Scoop. We go live into the newsroom with Kelly Johnson. Kelly?
Yeah, Steve, a lot going on with the Texans right now. We'll continue to track the happenings of Ed Reed and his visit here in Houston. We'll talk with John McClain, who met Reed at the airport this morning. Plus, Connor Barwin is the latest free agent to leave Houston. More on his 6-year deal with Philly, joining another former Texan, James Casey. Plus, the Rockets react to Kobe's ankle injury and whether Dante Jones' defense was dirty. Speaking of the Rockets, Demo tells us about the keys to his continued emergence, and we'll have an update from spring training. We'll tell you how touted prospect Alex White performed on the mound. Steve, back to you.
All right, thanks, KJ. It is time now for our medical segment of the week, talking sports injuries from the Memorial Hermann Ironman Sports Medicine Institute. I was threatened with, bodily injury, no pun intended, if I didn't get that right. Dr. Walt Lowe, the chief doctor for the Rockets, the Texans, the University of Houston. And we like to talk about either injuries that happened today, this week, or guys here in the Houston area. Some, you can't really give all the details, but you can talk in general terms. So,
Sure.
Kobe Bryant, last night, turns his ankle on what some would call a cheap shot defensively. But I want to ask you, from a medical perspective, when you see an ankle turn like that, and we'll roll the tape, and as you watch it, what do you see?
Well, you know, what you see there is the typical basketball ankle injury. So a guy coming down from a shot, lands on somebody else's foot, and the ankle rolls to the outside. And so that can carry any degree of severity with it. And so I guess the best prognostic factor watching him when it happened last night was he got up and walked off the court.
Mm-hmm. And when here it looks like the ankle itself. Now, you're the doctor on the set. What do you see when you see that?
Well, you know, it's
two hands around is what I see. It's hard to tell.
I think he's got a skinny ankle. That must mean he can jump, you know. So, the first thing you do is you got to feel the bones. You got to make sure there's no fracture. And I think the word out of LA today was that, X-rays were negative and it's a significant ankle sprain. And, his timetable out is still sort of undetermined.
And when you're the Sunday basketball player out there who's watching at home and it happens to us, you turn your ankle and some people on the court say, keep playing, keep playing. Take your shoe off. Don't take your shoe off. Elevate it. Ice it. Don't ice it. Heat it. What should you do if it happens to you and you don't have Kobe Bryant, you don't have you on the sideline?
Well, you know, if you have a significant ankle sprain and it hurts to put your weight on it afterwards and then it's time to call it for a day, for sure. Ice is the deal. It's really ice and move it, okay? And so, you know, so you ice it, you stay off of it when you get home, you start your range of motion, and, you know, and as long as you're able to put weight on it, you're probably okay, and it's going to probably get well pretty quick. If you can't put your weight on it, pain's going up, swelling's big, you turn black and blue, that's probably something, you know, you get checked out.
All right, so that's an ankle. That happens to all of us.
Right.
Torn ACL, that doesn't happen to all of us, and it seems to happen pretty frequently here in pro sports. We've seen it, Brian Cushing with the Houston Texans, RG3 obviously now with Baylor, and then the Washington Redskins. And Derrick Rose is in the news as well because the reports are that he's been medically cleared, but he's not playing yet. How would you explain how a guy like Rose could be medically cleared but isn't on the court?
Well, I think it's easy because getting over an ACL is not all about just the physical recovery from it. And so there's a big step from being cleared medically to run, cut, jump, contest other players, you know, dunk, whatever, to getting on the plate or getting on the court and being your old self again, okay? And so that process can take a month. That process can take some people 3 or 4 months to get through. So being medically cleared says he's free to do anything you need to do to play basketball. The next step is for Derrick Rose to be the old Derrick Rose when he's back out on the court.
And when a guy's been medically cleared, does that mean that if off an ACL, are you more susceptible to tear it again, or is it the same as any other player? You know, is Brian Cushing just as likely to tear his ACL as J.J. Watt, Matt Schaub, or whomever?
Well, you know, that's a real common sense question there, is that, you know, I think the science and technology of us rebuilding ACLs is very good now, but do we rebuild a normal ACL? No, okay? And so the risk of a reconstructed ACL re-tearing is higher than the native ligament was tearing before. So you always kind of live with that a little bit.
A guy like Robert Griffin III, who tore his ACL and badly, and if I'm not mistaken was MCL and other ligaments around the knee as well. How do you judge when the timetable is right to get a guy back?
Well, you know, there are a lot of things, and you need to have some objective criteria. You know, and the first thing is everything has to heal, and I think that's what confuses a lot of people about ACLs, because they are rarely just an ACL. They're an ACL with a medial collateral ligament, or they're an ACL like Derrick Rose with a couple of cartilage tears that require healing. Same with RG3, a lateral collateral tear, evidently some meniscal tears along with that. So they're all different, okay? And so each of those structures has a healing time. So you have to get through those, and then you have to be strong. You have to have normal range of motion. You have to be able to go through a progression of skills. So you jog, then you sprint, then you cut and jump, and then you play.
And people who say, well, Adrian Peterson did it, he came back in, whatever, 6 months. Is he the exception to the rule, or has the bar now changed for the guys that you work with?
Well, I guess I'll start. You remember Jerry Rice. You're not
I've
that
heard of
young,
him.
all right? And Jerry Rice played at, what, 8 weeks, 9 weeks after his ACL, MCL, and it was a miracle, and everybody was going, well, everybody should be back. And then he played 1 game, was fine, and then he broke his kneecap the next game, and he was out for the next year. And so there are definitely, some of these guys are just genetic freaks, and, you know, with Adrian Peterson, you might could have cut his leg off and he'd come back in 6 months and be a star. And so there is some of that guys are just designed to recover. But for the most part, you know, it's the injury and the combination of injuries that come around with it and the time you have to put into the rehab. And I think that's where guys like that play pro football, Adrian Peterson, RG3, who are clearly those gifted athletic guys that get over this, they live in their training rooms with their PTA, TCs, you know, almost 24/7 after this. And so their full-time job becomes, to rehab their knee. And I think when they pay that kind of attention to detail, that's when you can see these early recoveries happen if there's not other complicating injuries.
Great stuff. You always learn a lot talking to a doctor. I try to do it as often as possible, not just because I'm married to one. Dr. Watlow, thanks for joining us here.
Great. It was a pleasure.
Sports Talk Live. We'll talk to you again here on CSN Houston. Coming up, Toyota Center is going to be packed watching hoops next weekend, not just inside, but outside. It's not the Rockets we're talking about. We've got the details coming up on Sports Talk Live. I don't even need a doctor, though. Catch you there.